talk about the beautiful business of milk today. Yeah, yeah. I got milk. Let's talk about milk. Oh yeah, baby, let's talk about the beautiful business of milk today.
This episode of Got Milk is sponsored by Shunya Agritech, the folks revolutionizing cattle nutrition with hydroponic green fodder. Visit their website at shunya.live for more details or download the Shunya app from Play Store or App Store.
Welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're going all the way to India.
Oh, very cool.
Maharashtra, India, to be exact. And we're going to be taking a look at their dairy industry.
Awesome.
You sent over this fascinating report. I think it's called Dairying in Maharashtra, a Statistical Profile 2015.
Right.
And it is chock full of information. I mean, there are maps, statistics, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
We're going to try to unpack some of that for our listeners and
fun.
figure out, what makes this industry so interesting.
Yeah.
So, for example, did you know that Maharashtra is like the second richest state
Really?
in all of India?
Wow.
And their milk production has doubled
Oh, wow.
in just the last 2 decades.
Yeah, that's impressive.
That's huge, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to kind of get into this and see what we can find.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's really interesting to see how their dairy sector has just exploded
Yeah,
right alongside their whole economic boom.
yeah.
The report does a really good job at highlighting that relationship, and
Yeah.
it's cool because it also reviews some pretty surprising regional variations
Oh, okay, cool.
within the state too.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of interested in.
Yeah.
The report mentions that Maharashtra has a higher per capita income
Right.
than the national average.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all know Mumbai is like the financial heart of India,
For sure.
but I'm wondering, how that economic power translates
Yeah.
to, these dairy farms, especially when you get out into the more rural parts of the state.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Right.
And the report actually points to some disparities there.
Oh, okay.
So Mumbai, along with Thainpun and Nasik, they generate like a whopping 50% of the state's entire income.
Wow.
That leaves the other 31 districts
Oh, wow.
to share the other half.
So it's not evenly distributed?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So while Maharashtra is, doing great on the national economic stage,
Right.
those benefits aren't necessarily evenly distributed,
Yeah.
like throughout the state.
It makes you think about like
Yeah.
the resources that are available and the infrastructure and stuff.
Yeah.
But before we get into all that,
Okay.
let's talk about the growth of this industry.
Okay, sure.
Because I think the report highlights this pretty incredible doubling of milk production in recent years.
It's huge.
Like, what is fueling that kind of expansion?
Well, a couple things are at play.
Okay.
First, there's been a noticeable shift
Okay.
in the types of cows that are being raised.
Oh,
Okay, so there's been a steady move away from
Oh.
indigenous breeds and towards these crossbred cows,
okay.
which are known for producing higher milk yields.
So is it kind of a simple equation then? More crossbred cows equals more milk.
Well,
There's any trade-offs to consider?
yeah, I think that's a crucial point. Like, while these crossbred cows may produce more milk, are they actually as well suited
Right.
to the local climate and conditions as like the indigenous breeds?
Yeah.
The report doesn't get too into the specifics of that,
Okay.
but it's something to think about when you're
Yeah.
evaluating the long-term sustainability of this approach.
And what about the impact on the indigenous breeds?
Yeah.
I imagine this shift could have some implications for their populations
Absolutely.
and genetic diversity down the line.
It raises questions about preserving,
Yeah.
those valuable indigenous breeds,
Yeah.
many of which have these unique adaptations to local environments and even diseases.
Okay.
The report mentions that the Maharashtra Livestock Development Board
Right.
is promoting these breeding programs.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to see how those programs are addressing the balance between,
Right.
increasing milk production and conserving those indigenous breeds.
So it's kind of a complex web of
so.
factors
Exactly.
influencing this whole industry.
Yeah, it's not just about cows and milk.
Right.
It's about economics, breeding practices,
Right.
and even the long-term environmental impact.
Okay, well, speaking of the environment,
Yeah.
there's this term that keeps popping up
Okay.
in the report, rain-fed state.
Right.
What does that even mean?
Okay, so that's a critical point.
Especially for an industry that's so water-intensive
Yeah.
as the dairy industry.
Maharashtra relies heavily on rainfall
Okay,
for its agriculture,
right.
including fodder production,
Mhm.
which is essential for livestock.
Yeah,
But the problem is rainfall is unpredictable,
right.
and Maharashtra faces frequent droughts and water shortages.
So how do dairy farmers cope with that uncertainty?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just hope for the best
No, you're right.
when you're talking about feeding your herd.
The report highlights some government initiatives
Yeah.
designed to mitigate the
Okay.
effects of these droughts.
Okay.
For instance, they organize these free fodder camps
Mhm.
during times of scarcity.
Okay,
They provide sugarcane tops
right.
at subsidized rates to help farmers
Yeah.
supplement their fodder supply.
Okay.
And they even implement bans on selling fodder outside the district
Oh,
to
wow.
ensure that there's local availability.
So they're really trying to control
Yeah, they're trying
all
to
that.
all of that.
It sounds like a constant balancing act,
Yeah.
trying to maintain a reliable food supply
Yeah,
for
right.
all these animals
Right,
with this unpredictable nature of rainfall.
for sure.
I'm also curious about this term dry matter
Okay,
that keeps appearing in the report.
right.
Is that just a fancy way of saying fodder?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Dry matter refers to the portion of the feed and fodder
Okay.
that's left after you remove all the water.
Oh, okay.
It's essentially like the biomass,
Okay.
the actual nutritional content
Okay.
that sustains the animals. So in a drought, when fodder is scarce,
Right.
the availability of that dry matter
Okay.
becomes really critical
But-
for dairy farmers.
So it's not just about having enough fodder.
Right.
It's about the nutritional value.
It's about the quality
Yeah.
of that fodder
Exactly.
being sufficient to keep the cows healthy and productive.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing this is where those regional variations
Yeah.
you were talking about come into play.
For sure.
Right.
Different parts of Maharashtra are going to face different climatic challenges
Yeah.
when it comes to, water
Yeah.
and fodder availability.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where we'll head next in our deep dive.
Okay, cool.
The report breaks down Maharashtra into these different agroclimatic zones,
Okay.
each with its own unique set of challenges and opportunities.
All right, sounds good. I'm ready.
So buckle up.
We were just talking about how important water availability is
Right.
for dairy farming.
Hmm.
And this report goes into these fascinating...
Agroclimatic zones
Yeah.
across Maharashtra. And it really paints this picture of diverse land types.
Yeah.
Everything from coastal regions to hilly terrains and plains.
It's amazing.
How do these varying environments
Yeah.
shape dairy practices?
It's so interesting to see how farmers adapt
Yeah.
to these different zones.
Okay.
So take the transition zone 2, for example.
Right.
That's like the coastal region.
Mm-hmm.
They get a lot of rainfall there.
Okay.
And they have this laterite soil,
Okay.
which creates a great environment for growing
Mm-hmm.
things like paddy and coconut.
Okay.
So all this greenery provides a totally different kind of fodder
Right.
than, say, the western Maharashtra plain zone,
Okay.
which is known for its hilly terrain,
Mm-hmm.
moderate rainfall, and crops like sugarcane and grapes.
So it sounds like each zone
Yeah,
presents its own unique set of advantages and challenges
for sure.
for dairy farmers.
Definitely.
Would that mean that
Yeah.
the types of cattle breeds they choose
Yeah.
also vary depending on the region?
The report highlights how certain breeds do better
Okay.
in specific environments.
Okay.
Like indigenous breeds might be better adapted
Okay.
to harsher conditions, like
Right.
in the scarcity zone.
Right, with the low rainfall?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Or crossbred cows might excel
Right.
Yeah.
in regions with more water
Makes
and
sense.
fodder.
So there's this constant interplay
There is.
between nature and human choices.
Absolutely.
It's not just about picking the highest yielding breed.
Right.
It's about finding the right fit
It's all about finding the right fit.
for the local environment.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's why it's so important to understand these regional nuances.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to develop effective strategies
Right.
for the dairy industry.
Yeah, you can't have this one size fits all approach.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this leads us to another important aspect
Okay.
that the report kind of hints at.
Okay.
The environmental impact.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one
Yeah.
of dairying in Maharashtra.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking about water scarcity,
Right.
but I imagine there are other environmental considerations,
Okay.
especially as milk production keeps growing.
Yeah. As I was talking about earlier,
Right.
meeting the increasing demand for fodder
Yeah.
can put pressure on land resources.
Okay.
Now, the report doesn't specifically talk about deforestation,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes sense to assume that,
Right.
expanding agricultural land
Right, to grow more
to
fod.
produce more fodder.
Yeah. Could potentially encroach on forested areas,
Exactly.
which of course would lead to a whole bunch of problems.
Yeah.
Habitat loss, biodiversity decline,
Mm-hmm.
even impacting carbon sequestration.
It's a chain reaction.
Yeah, it is.
And then there's the often overlooked issue
Okay.
of greenhouse gas emissions
Right.
from livestock.
Mm-hmm.
Cows, especially, produce
Yeah.
methane,
Right.
which is a potent greenhouse gas
Yeah.
as part of their digestive process.
Of course.
So as Maharashtra is, expanding its dairy industry,
Right.
it's really important for them to consider these emissions
Right.
and try to figure out ways to mitigate their impact.
It's kind of a double-edged sword.
It is.
Dairying contributes so much to the state's economy
Yeah.
and provides livelihoods for a lot of people,
Mhm.
but it also has this potential to strain the environment.
That's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
Finding that balance
Ah.
between economic growth
Right.
and environmental sustainability.
It makes you wonder what steps they're taking
Yeah.
or could be taking
Right.
to minimize the environmental footprint
Mhm.
of this industry.
Well, the report mainly focuses on the statistical profile,
Okay.
but it does mention some initiatives,
Right.
like the National Dairy Plan,
Right.
which aims to increase productivity.
Okay.
And higher productivity could mean
Okay.
producing more milk with fewer resources.
Right. So it's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
Maybe investing in research and development. Could lead to innovations in feed efficiency
Mhm.
or manure management
For sure.
and further reduce that environmental impact.
Those are great points.
Yeah.
And it's not just about government initiatives either.
Right.
Consumer choices play a big role too.
Okay. How so?
Well, like choosing to buy dairy products
Okay.
from farms that prioritize sustainable practices.
So being more conscious consumers
That's
and
the big
understanding the impact of our choices on the environment.
For sure.
But let's shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and talk about another interesting thing.
Okay.
The report touches on
Okay.
the social dimensions
Right.
of dairying in Maharashtra.
It's really interesting how the
Yeah.
report brings in data
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
literacy rates,
Mhm.
access to electricity,
Right.
and even the presence of
Okay.
scheduled castes and scheduled tribes
Mhm.
within the dairy farming community.
So it's really painting a picture of this
It is.
human landscape that's
Yeah.
intertwined with this industry. And it reminds us that behind all these,
Yeah.
impressive milk production figures
Right.
are real people
There are real people
whose lives are being affected by
whose lives are directly affected.
how this industry's doing.
Yeah.
So how do these social factors,
Yeah.
like literacy rates and access to basic amenities,
Right.
how do those influence the dairy sector?
They play a big role.
Okay.
For example, rising literacy rates
Mm.
really empower people
Okay.
to access information
Okay.
about new technologies, market trends,
Mm-hmm.
and best practices.
Okay.
This can lead to better decision-making on farms
Right.
and, just a greater ability to adapt to change,
It's about equipping people with the knowledge and
Yeah.
skills
Yeah.
to not only survive but thrive
to thrive. Yeah.
in this dynamic industry.
Yeah.
What about access to things like electricity?
Okay. So
How does that factor in?
the report shows a big increase
Okay.
in the number of rural households
Mm-hmm.
with electricity. And this is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine the possibilities,
Right.
refrigeration to store milk,
Yeah.
better lighting in the animal sheds,
Right.
even potentially using electric milking machines.
It's about improving efficiency,
Yeah,
reducing spoilage,
for sure.
ultimately improving the quality of life
Exactly.
for those dairy farmers.
For sure.
The report also mentions a pretty sizable
Yeah.
scheduled caste and scheduled tribe population involved in dairying.
Right.
What are the implications there?
Well, this highlights how important it is
Oh.
to have inclusivity within the industry.
Yep.
Scheduled castes and scheduled tribes
Yeah.
often face these socioeconomic disadvantages.
Right.
It's really important to
Yeah.
make sure that they have equal access to resources,
Right.
training, and market opportunities. That's really crucial
Yeah.
for social equity and sustainable development.
Creating an industry where everyone has a chance,
Exactly.
regardless of their background. I want to circle back, though,
Okay.
to something we talked about earlier,
Okay.
the cultural significance
Yeah.
of dairying in India.
Oh, for sure.
The report mainly focuses on statistics,
Right.
but we can't ignore
You can't.
there's deep cultural roots to
Totally.
this industry.
Absolutely.
So how does that cultural perspective influence consumer preferences and the way this industry operates.
For example,
Yeah.
there's a strong preference
Okay.
for fresh, unprocessed milk
Okay.
in many communities.
Mm.
And this influences,
Yeah.
the structure of the milk distribution networks
Okay.
with a focus on local supply chains
Right.
and direct-to-consumer sales.
So it's fascinating to see how something as seemingly simple as milk
Right.
can be so intertwined with
Well,
cultural values and practices.
Absolutely.
And it reminds us that the dairy industry
Yeah.
isn't just about economics and statistics. It's about people, their traditions,
Right.
and their connection to the land.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It really highlights how rich and complex this industry is.
Yeah.
And it encourages us to, look beyond the numbers
Yeah.
and appreciate the human element at its
Sure.
core.
It's a reminder that our choices as consumers,
Yeah.
the policies we support, even the research we fund,
Right.
all of it has these ripple effects throughout this whole system.
It's a system.
But let's zoom in a little bit on
Okay.
what happens to all that milk
Okay.
once it leaves the farm.
Okay.
The report looks at milk utilization,
Right.
and I'm curious to see how it breaks down these various pathways that milk takes
Okay.
in Maharashtra.
That's where we'll head next.
Okay.
Exploring those diverse uses of milk
Okay.
and the trends that are shaping its journey
Okay.
from the farm to our tables.
Sounds good.
Get ready for some really cool insights into the world of milk utilization in Maharashtra.
Okay, so we've covered, Maharashtra's economic landscape,
Right.
the environmental and social sides of its dairy industry.
Yeah.
Now let's actually follow the milk and
Okay.
see what happens to it
Yeah.
after it leaves the farms.
Let's do it.
This report, digs into milk utilization.
Mhm.
I'm curious to see, how that milk is being used and consumed throughout the state.
Yeah, this section of the report really shows
Okay.
how people in Maharashtra are consuming
Yeah.
milk and dairy.
Okay.
One key trend is just how much
Okay.
milk is kept for household consumption. And it's not just a little bit,
Yeah.
it's consistently around 40%
Wow, 40%.
between 2000 and 2013.
That's a lot of milk
Yeah.
staying within households.
It is.
It seems like fresh milk really is a staple in their diet.
Absolutely. And it ties back to
Right.
that cultural significance.
Yeah.
Fresh milk is such a big part of their food culture. And the data shows that.
Yeah, for sure.
But the report also points out
Okay.
that there's been a gradual decline
Okay.
in the percentage of milk
Okay.
that's used for making dairy products at home.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Are people moving away from,
It seems that way.
those traditional practices of
Yeah.
making things like ghee and paneer in their own kitchens?
There are a few possible reasons for that shift.
Okay. Like what?
Well, urbanization, for one,
Okay.
often leads to changes in lifestyles and food habits.
Right. People have less time.
Exactly.
Less space.
Yeah, they might not have the time
Right.
or the space to do all that traditional food prep.
And there's so much.
And plus, with the rise of all these commercially produced
Right.
dairy products,
Yeah.
convenience often wins out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
If you can just pick up paneer at the store.
Yeah. Why would you spend all that time making it yourself?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So where does all the rest of the milk go?
Okay, so the rest of the milk.
The milk that's not consumed fresh
Yeah.
or turned into, these homemade products?
It's either sold or it's sent for processing
Okay.
into various dairy products.
Gotcha.
And the report highlights how important these dairy cooperatives are.
Okay, what are those?
So they collect the milk from farmers,
Okay.
process it,
Oh.
and then market it under all these different brand names.
So it's like this system
Yeah, it's a structured system.
connecting those small-scale dairy farmers
Exactly.
with the larger market.
They're like a vital link in the chain,
Okay.
making sure farmers get fair prices for their milk
Right,
and that consumers have access to safe,
right.
quality-controlled products.
It sounds like a win-win
It is.
for everybody.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm curious, though.
Yeah.
What are some of the most popular dairy products
Okay.
in Maharashtra?
So the report doesn't really get into specifics about that. But based on what we've talked about,
Right.
we can guess.
Liquid milk, given its cultural significance
Right.
and the high household consumption, is probably still dominant.
Right.
But as lifestyles change
Yeah.
and people want more convenience,
Yeah.
I imagine the demand for those ready-to-eat products,
Yeah. Like yogurt.
yogurt paneer,
Right.
is on the rise.
Okay.
And this is probably shaping how the industry is adapting and innovating.
Yeah.
The report talks about the National Dairy Plan,
Mm.
and one of its goals is to strengthen those village-level
Okay.
milk procurement systems.
What does that look like?
So better infrastructure for collecting milk
Okay.
in rural areas,
Okay.
including chilling centers to keep the milk fresh.
That makes sense.
This reduces spoilage,
Right.
improves the quality.
Yeah.
It's about modernizing the supply chain
Yeah.
to meet the demands of this growing industry.
So it's really interesting to see how tradition and modernization
Yep.
are both shaping the
Yeah.
dairy industry. It seems like a tough balance to strike.
It is.
And it brings us to a question for
Yeah.
you, the listener.
Okay, hit us.
What do you think the future of milk consumption in Maharashtra will look like?
Yeah, will those traditional practices stick around
Mhm.
alongside these new trends?
And what role will technology play?
yeah, what about
Outside the industry?
Uh,
And how will consumer choices
right.
influence its direction?
Those are great questions.
Yeah.
I think this deep dive has really given you, the listener,
Yeah.
a great foundation
A starting point,
to explore those questions further.
for sure.
We started with this report full of statistics and maps,
Right.
and we unpacked it together,
Yeah.
and it revealed this complex and fascinating story
It did.
about the dairy industry in Maharashtra.
Really.
We learned about the booming economy,
Yeah.
but also those regional disparities.
Yeah. And how those affect.
Right, dairy farmers.
We talked about water scarcity,
yes,
those
wow.
environmental considerations.
All the challenges
Smart.
increasing milk production.
Absolutely.
We looked at the human side.
Yeah. The
and
people, access to
the
infrastructure,
need for inclusive growth.
all important.
And then we traced the journey of the milk itself
The journey of the
from the farms to our tables.
Yeah.
We saw how culture influences things
For sure.
and those changing dynamics of milk
So
utilization.
many moving parts.
It's been a really insightful deep dive.
It has.
Remember, though,
Yeah.
the most valuable knowledge
Right.
is the kind you can put into action.
Absolutely.
So when you're, enjoying your next glass of milk
Yeah.
or having a paneer dish,
Yeah.
think about all the things
Think about all the factors.
that brought it to your table.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll research those government schemes
You could.
or the different cattle breeds in Maharashtra.
Yeah.
Or even just explore,
Yeah.
the environmental impact of your own dairy choices.
There's a whole world out there to learn about.
That's the beauty of learning.
Yeah.
It makes you curious
Yeah.
and it helps you make better choices.
So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
On this deep dive into Maharashtra's dairy industry.
It's been fun.
Until next time,
Yeah.
keep exploring, keep learning,
Keep learning.
keep those questions coming.
Absolutely.
I got milk. Let's talk about milk.